250, and 400. That's a lot of shows. I keep saying this, but it's true every single week. And every single week it's one more show. Now, we're on air, online, and on your smart device. So grab an app to listen anywhere, or listen at home on a Grace Tabletop Digital Radio. Now, if you missed the show, shame on you. Shouldn't have, but you did. Dave, I'm sure you caught it. I missed it.
I caught it. Yeah.
Good man. I'll let you talk about that in just a second. I had my daughter's birthday due at the park. It was nice. Her birthday was yesterday, but thank you, sir. Seven strong. I know time.
Great age, bud.
Yeah, I'd like. You know what? I go back to 7 and a half. But so that's why I missed it. I do apologize, but I did have a chat to her quickly. And I tell you what, we're going to look at Dave. This is something hot off the press. We're going to see if there's something we can do about her being published in Australia. There seems to be some roadblocks, so I want to see if we can do something via Shiny Side Out, our corporation, my friend.
Yeah, awesome, cool.
So we'll have a chat to Solaris around this. If you're still listening, Solaris, but we just were chatting on Skype.
Great show, by the way, Solaris.
Always is. Okay, so tell me quickly.
She had a roundtable. She had a roundtable tonight, and it was so good. And Willie Miranda, Dr. Heather Lynn, Madeline Rudy, and John Savage. And look, there was so many times that I wanted to dial in and just start talking with them, because it was like your best friends in your around the dining room table. It was great. What a great show, Solaris.
That is scary on so many different levels. But yeah, I hear you, man. If I think about all the people that I like to talk to, if we all get in the same room, man, it's like a beer hall. Thank you, Solaris. Thank you. It's like a beer hall and a coffee house all rolled into one. That's the fermenting ground for revolution, my friend. Fermenting ground for revolution is what that is. But yeah, that's fantastic stuff. But yeah, look, we'll get in touch with Solaris now. So that's what you missed now, but you don't have to miss it. In fact, you haven't actually missed it, because if you miss something, that means you probably never, ever get a chance to experience it again. But you can if you pay $5 I think it's $5.95 a month. Some crazy small number, and that's a subscription, because we're living in a as a service society. Everything is subscription based. That's just the way of the world. So if you pay that, you can access all of the Freedom Slips archives, and go back, check out our shows, so essentially you can have content consumed or delivered to you whenever you choose to do so. That's the world we live in. So $5.95. Go to the website. If you don't want to donate, that's cool. You don't have to donate. It's Listen Up on the radio. But hey, if you subscribe, that's even better. That's awesome, right? That means you're engaged and you're willing to support the station on a regular basis. So that would be awesome.
Do you know what I'm going to do, Mackie? I'm going to talk to the station management and see that the Patreon subscriptions allow for private content, that we'd be able to do Patreon only at the station content.
Oh yeah, I think it's a good idea. Why not? Sure.
Yeah, only for subscribers. That'd be great.
What Patreon wants is content, man. And people consuming it, so I'm sure they have no issue with that.
They don't. But the station, our station administration needs to approve it.
Oh, absolutely.
But certainly that's going forward to them. Yeah.
I think that's a good idea. Look, anything to support the station has given us a platform for 10 years. 10 years! Before we go into the meat of the show, though, and this is not a gimmick, I don't want you to think it's a gimmick, we take it very seriously. And in fact, this past week was NAIDOC Week. NAIDOC Week, what does that mean? NAIDOC Week is it's meant to be a celebration, really, of the original cultures in Australia. Before the Dutch and the English and all the other Europeans decided to come here and take whatever they wanted. That's what they took, whatever they wanted.
Becky, buried in the Egyptian tombs was boomerangs, right?
Well, look, they found this is the thing people don't notice. People have, they have found boomerangs, right? Not only that, they found trace elements or traces of cocaine and coffee in mummies. Whoa! So what? There are no cocoa trees and there are no coffee beans in Africa. Right? There were none while the Egyptians were around. Okay.
they all came from South America. Their noses. Goodness.
Yeah. So look, let's be very clear here before I go to the more serious part of the introduction. there's a lot about history we don't know. And I think, after having listened to us for 10 years and maybe, doing your own research, listening to the other hosts, et cetera, you probably realize that as well on your own. The key thing here is to understand, though, that I think our forebears were much more competent and a lot more industrious and explorative than we give them credit for. I mean, the Phoenicians alone, I mean, they were so, and this is the forerunners of the Carthaginians, really. The Phoenicians were so secretive about their trade routes that we still don't know where they went and how they went there, and et cetera, et cetera. And we know the mechanism of Antikythera is around. It was around at least 2,000 years ago, which means you no longer had to navigate by coastal line. You can navigate across the oceans, across the seas. Right, because we thought in our wisdom that until recently, until we invented the sextant, nobody could navigate away from a coastline because you needed something to navigate by, right? And it was the coastline they thought was the safest thing. So I think that's complete nonsense. In any event, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. For me, here in Pemulwuy, it is the Ruck people, and for Dave,
it's the Darkinjung.
Thank you, Dave. And we would further like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and future, custodians of the land. And you know what the funny thing is? We are now looking at forest management the Aboriginal way, okay, the First Nations way. That's what we're doing in Australia because we did such a great job with it over the last few decades or centuries. Now we're looking at how the first people, the native people before the white folk came along, how they did it, and successfully for tens of thousands of years. Now, notwithstanding the fact that we are going through a change in our patterns of weather and climate, right? I'm not saying it's anyone's fault. I'm just saying that's what's happening because you've got to be blind not to see it. I think we could do a lot better than what we are doing today. So that's where we are. We are going to talk about current affairs here for the first hour of the show. The second hour of the show, which will be a separate stream, we'll delve into Yeti, Alma, and the gang. So we're going to talk about Bigfoot and so forth in the second hour. But Dave, look, the news of the hour. I mean, there's a few things. Just want to quickly, before I throw the ball to you, and because Dave has put some very nice news notes for us. Okay, of course, COVID-19 is something we have to talk about, right? And again, not going to argue here whether it's a real thing or not. People are dying, something's happening, etc. So we need to deal with it. Donald Trump and Joe Biden, it's a never-ending saga. It's funny. In Australia, we're now faced with a huge dilemma, which came up recently. We now have a report that's going to be released on Thursday, where it will detail the war crimes that we are alleged to have committed in Afghanistan specifically over the course of that war. And I saw some footage where a guy lying on the ground was just shot point blank, like literally 30 centimeters away.
He'd been captured. He had his hands behind his head.
Yeah, he was on the ground.
He had no weapons, he'd been discussed. He'd been just talking with them, and cooperating or not. You're a prisoner of war. You're not allowed to just shoot them unarmed, like that.
But they're not prisoners of war. They're what are they called? Unlawful combatants. That's how the Americans got around it.
Of course. I'm sure
so
we can come up with an equally
always,
lame definition and exonerate them, but change the rules so we never do it again or something, right?
There's always a lawyerly, weaselly way to get out of things.
Weasel
words. Weasel words, man. That's where we live. We live in the weasel world. Now, that's one thing. We also probably want to share our thoughts on the Great Reset with you. A bad thing, good thing, etc., etc. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I don't know. And without further ado, Dave, why don't we? Actually, let me ask you this: how have you been over these last few days?
How have I been? It's been warmer than normal. I've been okay. Actually, I had some more scans done for my osteoporosis and nodes on my adrenal glands.
That's so weird. I mean, you're not like 80 or 90. Osteoporosis, I picture like an 80-year-old woman is what in my head, right?
That's clearly what I am. I'm an 80-year-old woman. Old woman, man. Well, I couldn't just call you man. You could have called me Dennis. I didn't know your name was Dennis. You didn't ask. I'm 37.
It's not dirt.
There's some lovely filth over here. Whose castle is this? No, I could do this all night. I'm quite old in the bone department apparently, and my I don't take on any calcium. It's some kind of disorder, probably named after me when they've gotten through this. I don't know.
Oh, sorry. So it's actually these calcium supplements, etc. They're no good to you.
The goggles, they do nothing.
Oh.
Seriously, there is. I've been taking calcium supplements for 8 months. This is what 11 months now, or something like that, whatever it is, and my bone density is still lame. It may be I'm one of those avatar creatures, Meki, with carbon fiber bones or something.
If you had carbon fiber bones, I could drop you off the Empire State Building and you'd be okay.
Yeah, but yeah, let's not test that hypothesis.
Maybe tomorrow.
So that's an onion in the ointment. But then further was the CT I had, and they said there's nodes or something on my lungs, and I don't know what that means. There's a specialist team. But look, that's TMI from our audience, Mickey. It's irrelevant, I think. But how have I been? Yeah, not bad actually. Did some yard work, got out there, family's well. It's leading up to Christmas time, so whatever that means, I don't know. I saw that Ticketek, Meki, Ticketek, that's our ticketing system for live events.
Oh yeah.
Has now been put in place for the New Year's Eve celebrations around the harbour, where some places like WA have banned the fireworks entirely. We've just made them a little smaller and put this on. And get this is really nice for all of the frontline workers that are working with the virus and those that worked with the bushfires. Because remember, this time last year, we were bathed in smoke and it was dangerous with the bushfires. Remember the bushfires? Oh, yeah, that. Because I thought that this is stealing a line from Julie Nolke, who did a great YouTube. Have a look at her, and she said, "Yeah, I thought that would be a pivotal, defining moment of 2020." You'd think, right? But not so much, because the virus came along. So you've got to buy a ticket through Ticketek, prove your identity to them, they verify it, then you get a ticket, then you can go to the very selective areas around the harbour. There's no, jostling shoulder to shoulder. However, if you're a football fan, you can have 37,000 people or 50,000 people in a stadium and no one bats an eyelid. I mean, you can't go and watch a motor race. You can't do that. So, but how does it affect us? Well, we've Mackie, just on the virus front, we've been pursuing elimination of the virus in Australia. And Victoria had the Melbourneites, for that matter, the people who live in Melbourne City, had the longest sustained shutdown of anyone in human history.
Yeah, that's right.
That is, I think that's going to seem like a little summer camp compared to the US when you get around to getting Biden put in place. Because he's trying to dismiss, we're not going to put any lockdowns in. And then in the background, it's like, quick, get the lockdown plans in place. Masks first, because the WHO suggested that lockdowns shouldn't be the primary use tool for controlling the virus. Now, we did pretty good with it, with all the things we put in place. We've got down to, I think, 6 cases a day. Right, and 5 of which came from New Zealand in the 100 people that just arrived yesterday.
Correct. We had no
community spread.
We had no.
But northwestern Sydney, the Hills district, still has coronavirus in the sewage. So there is a cluster there. They don't know how big, but it's clearly asymptomatic. Or people are just sucking it up and going to work. We don't know. No one knows yet. We'll find that out. That's going to be coming next week, I think.
It's all the slaves they keep in the basement.
Oh, the good old days.
Who said that? Hey, someone just used my mic, man. What's wrong?
There's people using our account. Yeah. It's
people in the walls.
So last week we had 50 million. Now there's 53 million. We've gone up 3 million
Oh no, we 54
Oh, 55.
and a half.
Okay, so remember, I'm 2 days old on my data.
No,
Yeah.
I'm with you. Yeah.
So the deaths
Crazy.
gone up, and considerably. The world is it's 650,000 new cases a day, right? This isn't going away anytime soon. The US is, what is it? Would it be 11 million now for you?
11.2.
There you go.
Yeah.
So these numbers are pretty crazy, Mickey. And one of the things that I love doing is graphing stuff. I love tracking data, and everything is the total active patients is just climbing like it is, and it's predicted it's going on path. So is the deaths. The deaths are on path as well, from a trend, from a 6-month trend out for another 2 or 3 months. And the world infections are slowly going above my trending line, but that'll adjust itself. Everything else is pretty good. There's only 2 countries in the 100 club, or less than 100. That's Dominica and St. Vincent, and the I forget what it's called, grid lines. They're the only 2 that are peaking there. There's really not much else that's accelerating out of control until you get to the 100,000 and the million club. They're the ones that are all off the charts. Now, I've even got this thing, Mickey, and if you were watching the live stream, you'd see this. And I should paste that. That's what I haven't done. I haven't pasted. I think I can still. Can I still paste that? Yep. It's in the chat room for all of those there. And the USA and France are the 2 worst numbers per day. But then it shows a really interesting picture of who's absolutely exponential. And you see the US, France, and Italy as the absolute worst players here. Russia is peaking, but it's sort of under control. It's sort of started to taper off. But, it's early days into the winter, in the northern winter, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But so I've got a picture here of the top 10. And in the top 10, it's I have to say, the US, on its current trajectory, is looking to hit like 1.5 million people per day by the end of January, is what I've been predicting. So unless controls are put in place, like, wearing masks and mandatory masks and social distancing, regardless if you believe whether they work or not, if you do that, you might actually have like an Easter where you can go outside.
Yeah. Possibly.
So I know that
in 2025,
each state is in control of its own agenda as far as controls, as lockdown would be concerned. Here we got the same. So federally, they could advise the states what to do, and they just back down and goes, you know what? Or so they put their back up and said, no, we're going to listen to our own minister, their health minister, and we're going to do what we want.
Yeah.
Well, that's how we controlled it. And we got to, let's say, the elimination phase, where we've got very few. We should be testing people before they get on board a flight to come to us. The testing should be put at their destinations.
Well, this is where Captain Common Sense would come in. Yeah, I'm Captain Common Sense. Let's do it the right way. Let's test before you leave your country to come to our country.
Because then it ends up
let's shoot Captain Common
coming
Sense.
out of our money, our budget. I know. Ridiculous.
Of course.
And it also puts all those other, not freeloaders, all the other people that wanted to come here, it puts them at risk. So, I feel sorry for them. We should have a filter at their... Because we know exactly who's going to be flying here and getting here from all of the methods of travel. Because they've got to apply to come here now.
Of course. We know exactly. See, we have probably got more control right now than ever before. And more, not just control, but also insight. Right? So we've been, and you're right. You have to seek special permission. There's no excuse anymore. There really isn't.
But anyway, look. Having said all that, I do wish the US well in all of its ventures. It's like a parting gift, isn't it, Mickey?
It's not good. It's not you, everybody. It's not you.
Well, I knew him for most of his life, and
I knew him well. I came to bury Caesar, not to praise him. There goes my classical education. That's all I got. But clearly, it is dire, and we're making light of it, and we shouldn't. So there are a number of things in America that concern me at the moment, Dave. And America is important because America is not just a barometer for the rest of the world. America is still a beacon. It's still the country that every other country models itself on. And people are trying to get to America. Right? People are trying to get to America because they think it's a land of possibilities, and I honestly believe it still is. However,
opportunity.
What we're seeing with COVID-19,
the land of opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And if you work hard, then you can make something of yourself. That's the credo. Anyway, so we have the COVID-19 situation. Whatever it is, something is there. Something is happening. People are dying. It's killing our economy. Then we have the Trump-Biden dilemma. I'm going to call this the Biden-Trump dilemma.
Yeah. Okay.
And what I mean by that is, I don't like either of them. I'm sorry to say, I really don't. Okay. And if you've got a country of 300 million people, and this is for all my American friends out there, and every listener is in America today, ask yourself why, if you've got 300 million people in your country, why is it those two that bubbled up to the top? There's something fundamentally wrong with your system. Not saying our system's any better, but seriously?
I want to respond to that. And do you know why they bubbled to the top? No. Would you like to hear my opinion of why they're at the top?
I do want to hear your opinion.
Thank you, Mickey. It's because all the others are employable as CEOs and leaders. They're not. You know, Biden's a career politician, and they're useless. Yes. Trump, well, he's not run a hell of a lot of successful companies. Just
none.
There you go, none.
He's run all successful companies, except since he's been president. No. So to his defense, since he's been president, his companies have done pretty well.
That's because he hasn't been hands-on. So there you go. Just like Bush Jr.
Homer Simpson has been on holidays for how long? 30 days. Oh, excellent.
No, excellent for 30 days. That's right.
So you're saying to me, hang on, you say Donald Trump is the Homer Simpson of the business world. That's what you said.
That's what I said. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. That's going to get me more hate mail. But, Mackie, the thing I try to embrace is remaining a commentator. Yeah? Mm-hmm. And you don't take sides of the people playing ball or playing, whatever the ball game happens to be, because that's just really poor form. When I try to discuss with my friends, I think they have a hard time with me being a commentator because they're emotionally connected to one side or another. Doesn't matter what country they live in. Everyone has an opinion, and I try to work out how much is an inherited opinion because I have about 15 news inputs and I only have to say a keyword here and a keyword there and I can find out which side they're on because I hear all the feeds. And it's funny, Maggie, when how deep this emotional connection runs. And right now, I know that we've spoken about this. I think our audience needs to understand what it would mean with such a divided nation. If their emotional connection is so strong that they felt they needed to action those emotions, like we saw the DNC at the last election protesting wildly in the streets. We already saw the DNC dancing in not waterfalls, so fountains, and dancing in the street and in the street. And dancing in the street, and we saw them celebrate like there was no tomorrow. It was like it was 1999.
But you've so polarized the American people now, and over the last, and I think Donald Trump. Do you remember what we said would happen if Donald Trump was elected?
Yeah.
Do you remember what we said? We said that nothing would be certain. We said, whatever is going to happen, the one thing you can count on, you have no idea what's going to happen. And lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. And fair enough too, right? And I think that's actually important for the discourse, because if you only always have the same, nothing changes. If you only ever have the same, and let's be very clear here, right? Over the last few years, few decades, etc., in Australia, anywhere else, in countries where there was peaceful handover of power, we haven't seen much change, Dave. There hasn't really been any revolutionary movement or anything that really, oh wow, that's different. Donald Trump has done what he said he would do. He would focus on America, very similar to what Woodrow Wilson did, and very, very similar to what President Monroe did as well. So I don't know if you're familiar with the Monroe Doctrine of the 19th century, America for the Americans. And then Woodrow Wilson, after World War I, when the League of Nations was formed, he did not participate. He said, no, America wants nothing to do with it, thank you very much, and off he went. So this is not new. This kind of policy is not new in American politics, right? We are only used to it, or what we consider the status quo for the last 60, 70 years, because we've not known anything else. There's very few people alive that remember, pre-World War II world. And ever since World War II, America has been Globocop coming to a country near you. And look, but and in many ways, especially after the collapse of the Soviet Union, it was really up to America to be that mega power, right? The hyper power, not even a superpower. And now other things are happening as well. And so we don't know any better. And you need a certain kind of president to run this kind of country in this kind of political forum. Now the world is changing. There's no longer need for this global cop. You've got other polarized powers appearing: Russia, China, Japan, Europeans, etc., etc. So there are other players now they're challenging America, yes, one, but it's also a challenge to the status quo of the last 60, 70 years. And that's where we are. If Trump is here or not is mostly irrelevant, because the world is going to change. The way political systems interact with each other is going to change. Okay, and Trump saw this, I'm sure, he's not stupid. And he wanted to make sure that America is not going to come out at the bottom of this, because ultimately, we are too involved with each other. We are too dependent on each other, economically, socially, etc., etc. If you look at the world, look at everything you have in your house. Point to the thing that was made in your country. You can't play this game if you live in China.
That's right. Okay, everything. Yeah.
But if you look around, everything that you have, everything that you buy, very few things are made in your country. That's a new thing. We never had this before, right? 50, 60 years ago. And we're also in a just-in-time economy, just-in-time, and also obsolescence economics. We like to follow, which means, oh well, my car's got a 3-year warranty. You can pretty much guarantee that something's going to go wrong with your car, your TV, or whatever, after 3 years. I mean, even buildings these days you don't trust anymore, because they're so shonky, and there doesn't seem to be any recourse anymore. So we're living in a society that is used to throw things away and to get things cheaply. So we will always send our workforce or employ a workforce in a country that will allow us to operate at rock bottom, right? This is where we're at. So is Trump, does he have rocks in his head when he's trying to bring manufacturing back to America? No, I think it's awesome. I think it's awesome. We should do. Okay, this is me now talking.
Wait, the US has the largest standing deployed military. Right?
Yeah, it does.
And I completely agree. My thoughts, if I were a leader and I was the leader of the US, I would bring my troops home.
Yeah, but it goes further than the troops. This is about the economic model we've been living under. We should move away from an economic system that exploits nations that have really, really cheap labor. We should move away from it. They had to install, I think we mentioned this before, Dave, I'm sure you talked about it. They installed suicide nets at the Apple factory in China. Why?
6 days a week, and
it was
only
such a problem.
2-hour breaks during the whole day, and you work a 17-hour day or something ridiculous.
Yeah. But think about it. If the problem is now big enough that you actually have to install suicide nets, I mean, 1 or 2, 10 suicides a year or whatever, the problem must be so massive.
Risk mitigation, that was the cheapest option. We couldn't change the working hours.
No, can't do that, my friend. Are you crazy? Where's my profit margin? See, we're living in a world of never-ending profits and ever increasing margins where we think we can grow limitlessly, which is complete nonsense. We need to go back, and this is not the Great Reset. We're going to talk about it in a second. This is not the Great Reset, but we need to go back to a world where we are more locally focused. I really enjoy food. I like cooking. I like watching cooking shows. And for the last 20 years, I've seen a massive movement, maybe even 30 years, a massive movement away from importing this and importing that and exporting this and then the other with relation to food, and focusing on what's in season locally.
Yeah. And not being stored in nitrogen, for 8 months.
Chefs.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. Top chefs going to a diet or a menu, if you will, that is locally
and
sourced
seasonal.
and is seasonal.
Completely.
Okay, and that's how we used to eat, and people were healthier and not obese, and they lived longer.
Did you watch my cooking?
And they lived
last
better.
Night?
Yeah, that was nice, but all of a sudden there was chicken and there was sauce. Chicken sauce.
I hit pause by mistake and then unpaused it, and I went, "Oh no, I've ruined it." So
it was like. It's like magic. So Dave was frying some chicken in the pan with some spices, and I think it was a curry dish making. And so in one frame you have the chicken, nicely sizzling away. It was beautiful with some spices, like I said. In the next shot, like literally the same shot, like the same pan, but all of a sudden there was like like a curry
filled with
sauce,
sauce,
probably coconut. Or
even I made the sauce and I filmed it, and I just didn't. I deleted it. It wasn't there anyway. But
the point here is that and look, I love cooking and I do cook a lot,
absolutely.
As much as I can, and I'm happy to share the videos. But and I cook these peasant dishes, like oxtail or beef chicken, which you have to cook for hours and hours. But my point is that we have to move back to a more local lifestyle. Look, it's fun to have peaches in winter and all that. Absolutely, right? But why don't we focus on what's seasonal? And start, pickling again.
See,
or
Mickey,
jamming.
I lived where I lived. There was a lot of Italians when I grew up, and they had the tomato festival, where all of the relatives would come around and they'd can all of their tomatoes. And that was crazy.
And
they would can them. They would make sauce out of it and do all the prep for the whole year, and the family would walk away with jars of it.
And that's what you should do. And look, I do the same. I have a huge cook-up and then I freeze it or whatever I do. Or I pickle it if I can. But my grandparents, my grandmother specifically, I mean, look, my grandparents, they were in the middle of the forest because my grandfather was a forester. That was back in Silesia, or Upper Silesia in what is now Poland.
It's very advantageous for his career to be in the forest that he's working.
Absolutely. And he was okay there. But the point is, there was no supermarket. Everything they had, they grew in the garden. Everything they had, they ate. My grandfather would go hunting as well. They would have, the butcher would come, I think twice a year. The butcher would come twice a year. You raise your own pigs and etc. And the butcher would then prepare. So they, and there was a community oven in the village, and everybody would bake their bread. There was a massive thing. And so my point here is, people lived well and they lived seasonally, because they had no choice. But we've created this fantasy world of supply chains and just-in-time supply, which is just not sustainable. It is simply not sustainable. And as soon as something happens, if you throw a spanner in the works, you've seen what happens now over the last few years. If you laugh at any prepper now, then egg is going to be on your face.
It should already. You should be wiping the egg off from the last time.
So, I know. So do we need a great reset? Yes, absolutely. We don't need a great reset as I know, right? As proposed by the IMF, Klaus Schwab, etc. Even Prince Charles has weighed in. I've been reading up on it in New Dawn magazine as well as in Time magazine. Obviously, very different opinions. But Dave, before we talk about the election, there's one thing I want to share with our listeners. And the article just came through on. This is from Sky News. Okay, 11 minutes ago it was posted on SkyNews.com.au. You can. I'll actually put it in the chat so you can see it. This is really.
I'll put it in the show notes.
So, thanks, buddy. Okay, so here it is, guys, in the chat. I'm gonna share it with you. So here we go. Great reset in Davos at the forefront of a great deception in the free world. 15th of the 11th, 2020, 11 minutes ago. Powerful individuals, groups, and large global organizations are at the forefront of a plan labeled the Great Reset, which intends to use the fear generated by the coronavirus to reshape the world and achieve net zero emissions, says Sky News host Rowan Dean.
I watched that
The
show,
Australian taxpayer spends... Oh, good man. The Australian taxpayer spends a fortune sending
Speaking of a
top
potential
politicians and public servants year in year out in luxury style to attend the World Economic Forum in Davos to help map out global economic structures. Now, I never got on that gravy train. I want to get on that gravy train. However, Mr. Dean pointed out behind its lavish exterior, the World Economic Forum is working with the UN, IMF, and other high-profile globalist organizations to introduce online activist movements and compliant local and national governments through a vast network of connected corporations. It is a global commitment they've made to use the panic and fear generated by the coronavirus as a means to reshape all our economies and laws and move to a new form of capitalism that focuses on net zero emissions. To use all the tools of COVID to tackle climate change, essentially. Mr. Dean said if implemented successfully, the Great Reset will undeniably and deliberately have extreme and possibly dire repercussions. And I'm going on to quote you, "You'll own nothing and you'll be happy" is just one of their marketing slogans, he said. The plan involves replacing shareholders of big companies with stakeholders who happen to be left-wing bureaucrats and climate change zealots, replacing mom and dad small businesses and private enterprises with big tech and big business. Remember, it's not only a great reset, it's a great deception. Now, this is one of the most dangerous things I have heard in a long time. This is actually not communism. Okay, so communism, everybody's the same. This is taking everything away from everybody except for the few. Okay, what this is feudalism. We're moving back into feudal times where the few own everything and you and I will own nothing. And we have a living wage, you know, and maybe we get Soma, Dave. Maybe we'll have Soma. You know, they'll keep us happy. If you haven't read Brave New World, I strongly suggest you read it while you still can.
Or I can have that metal orb from Sleeper.
Yeah, that works. But the point here is, it's a problem for anyone. And to be honest with you, Dave, though, I'll be honest. Even with COVID-19, what it is, and then the fear has generated, etc., etc. In my opinion, the Great Reset, except maybe for Europe, has exactly no chance of succeeding. None. Zero.
See,
okay?
I probably want to disagree with you there. What does success mean is my first question to your statement.
Well, having it introduced, I guess.
Yeah, see, I think it'll be introduced, but their measure of success, those ones who want it in place, is the thing that needs to be quantified. So putting it in place isn't their measure of success. It's about the climate change control and trying to get to net zero, whatever the outcome. See, for us, the very slogan that they're using in the billboards at bus stops, where you see a jet flying over and it's got like a line through it, and you see the you can call them chemtrails or contrails, whatever you want, coming out of the engines, and it says, the quote is, "You'll own nothing and you'll be happy." That's the quote beneath it. It's got a plane flying, but you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Subliminal messaging. I have to tell you, that's what messaging is, where you're focused on the object and you go, there's a plane. Yeah, but your subconscious is absorbing this, and if you see it often enough, when it comes your turn to having to do it, you'll automatically know the outcome and automatically agree. So this is an emotional connection. It's how advertising does it. They give you an image with an emotional connection to it, and then when they get to do it, they only have to reuse the image but with different phrasing, and you'll remember the original phrase plus the additional phrase that they're going to throw at you next time. So I have to say, but to be honest, my worry is all about the thing, about not owning anything, and how's that going to work. Apparently everyone's going to sign over all their stuff to the government, everything you own, and you'll, like for me, I've got a block of land, a house I built myself on land I chose and I purchased rightfully. Do I give that up for a living wage? I don't know. That was the plan. That's the plan, to get the living wage, to give it all up. But
yeah, see, this is the thing with it, right? I mean, we see it in other countries. It's playing out here, there, and everywhere. It doesn't take the extreme where you sign everything over, because signing everything over is pure communism. Okay, that component part is where you own nothing. That is communism, or everybody has the same, essentially. That's really what this is, right? What it does, though, and this is really where people have to start thinking about this. You know what happens in a society, and I've seen this because I've visited East Germany and I've visited the Eastern Bloc countries. Wow, in a society where no matter what you do, you will have the same. No matter what you do, right? No matter what you do, no matter how hard you work, you will get the same wage and the same kind of living standard as Bob, who does nothing. Bob sits on his bum all day long, does nothing. You work your bum off, right, as it were, but you have got nothing to show for it. I mean, you're just in the same, you're as well off as Bob, who's not trying. He's not even trying anymore, right? And that's exactly what happened in the Eastern Bloc countries, because unless you were like, some kind of black marketeer or something, underground stuff. But in the official economy, and the official system, it was completely irrelevant how much or how well you performed. I mean, it didn't really matter that you would have the same. You would all have the same. And what it kills is entrepreneurship, initiative. It kills innovation. It kills all of those things.
Because it provides no benefits to go and do those things. No. So I think, was Bob right? Absolutely. Bob took the easy street and didn't have to try.
Look, in that scenario, Bob is absolutely right? Because what's the point? And it was astounding. I mean, you go into a supermarket in East Germany. This was back in the 80s, right? And these shelves would be empty. There'd be nothing there, nothing, right? Or you see lines forming, and this is because my half or maybe quarter of my family lived in the Eastern Bloc countries, like East Germany and Poland, right up until the fall of the wall. In fact, if the line forms, you line
Doesn't
up.
matter what it's for.
Why? You don't know, but it could be. If people are lining up, you want it, all right? And even if you don't want it, you trade it, right? So that's the kind of world that kind of thinking engenders. It is not in the best interest of all of us. Now, do I believe that capitalism is self-regulating? No, of course not. It's stupid. It's stupid to think it is. It's not self-regulating. It's not. Having said that, some social or socialistic ideas are good. I think healthcare should be available to people. I think education should be available to people. I think public transport, etc., etc. I think these things should be available to people. On a certain standard. If you want more, right? If you wanted to be educated by a Harvard graduate or rocket scientist, then you pay for that, right? But everybody has the right to a good standard of health, a good standard of education, and a good standard of living in general. That's my opinion, right? We all have that right to that. And if you work hard, right, and make more money and you're successful, then you can afford better things for yourself, right? But the norm, like the normal stuff everywhere, that's still good. It's still good. You could live, right? You could live. Now I'm okay with that, helping people out that way. But we should not, at the same time, squash innovation and industrial people, like the people that show industry and engagement. They want to be successful, ambitious, because that's what will happen here. And the problem here is, of course, so it's signed over to the government. Dave, what does that mean, Dave? What does it mean?
It's funny because in other countries where you sign your property, you'd never owned the property to begin with. You just built a house on a piece of land, and they can tear it down whenever they want, and there's no. They don't give you any money for it. They're just going to move along. That
eminent domain.
Yeah. So it could go any way. And when I keep thinking about this, I think of the current youngest generation with their phones, and thinking they don't want to buy a house, Mickey. They don't want to do anything except for own a phone and sit around and being social.
Yeah.
That's being social on their own, in using a platform, a media platform. So I think that's something. Now, will they more than likely sign up to this? Yeah, they'll do that. But they would more than likely sign up because they'll be happy they don't need to own anything. They already agree with the statement.
you're not wrong. So you and I, we're dinosaurs, right? We came from I grew up in a world where I didn't get a participation award. If I lost the race, I'm a loser. If I didn't get the highest mark, I wasn't the best in the class.
I strove for my
it's
ribbons,
that simple.
Mickey, for my first, second, and third places. I did.
Yeah.
I was great at swimming and running. That's it.
And you were proud because it was achievement, all right? Because you worked hard to do it. Now you're all winners. Yeah, everybody's a winner. No, and not only that, everybody's coddled. You know, in my day, if the teacher said, "Oh, your son has got a behavioral problem," or well, they didn't say that, or whatever, he's misbehaved, or whatever, or he's lazy. In my case, he's lazy.
He doesn't do his homework. Yeah,
he's smart, but he's lazy. And they were right. Yep. I was lazy. And then when I tried, I got good marks. So what does that say? But the point is,
he could apply himself more. Yeah. but
these days,
there's a memory lane moment.
It's not the kid. It's the teacher. Oh, bad teacher.
Sure.
What? And that wasn't a day. Like, we didn't get beaten. I mean, when I was in school in the 70s, we didn't have
we had the cane.
Corporal punishment.
Yeah, we saw.
You did. All right. Okay. And in some places you still do, but just imagine doing it today. They'll sue you. 5 ways from Sunday. You can't even discipline your own child. They'll sue you 5 ways from Sunday. This is all deliberate as well, right? Now, and you're right, Dave. I think I actually haven't thought of it this way, but you're 100% correct. I think this whole reset thing, right, is going to fall completely flat if there were people like you and I that would have to live in it. But because we're dinosaurs and we're in our 50s, right? And who does coronavirus kill?
I know, right?
They will be left with especially in the developed nations. I'm talking about America, Europe, Australia. The wealthy Southeast Asian countries, etc. It'll be, and I hate to say this, but like half a glass of milk. All these people are not even like a half. We used to look at people, and when they're soft and they couldn't do anything, they didn't have a backbone. We used to call them half a glass of milk, and that's who we have out there, Dave. We're gonna have half full glasses of milk running around with their little iPhones, right? Spending money they never earned, but that's okay because they're used to it. Because I'm getting rewards for something I didn't do. It's
participation award, right? Yeah. So Mickey, we've only got like 6 minutes, right? And before the end of this, and I've got on the screen here. I've got one of our senators. Now she's not, generally liked by the majority of the nation. She is part of a One Nation party, where she was, it sounds great, wanted to unify the nation, have everyone, rowing in the same direction, except some of her ideas were maybe a little too right-wing, and just print money to get out of debt was one of the big ones that she had, and
that's new monetary policy.
It's current policy, but you can't say it. Shh. It devalues your dollar if we tell people about it. But what we'll do, because we want to borrow $1 trillion, we're the government, we don't borrow $1 trillion. So what we're going to do, we're going to loan the federal bank $200 billion, and they're going to give us $1 trillion. Yeah, that's great. Right, so we've now got $1 trillion debt, and they made money out of thin air. Now, that to me, once again, and we're fast spending that money, right? It's like teenagers with a credit card, and I don't see there's no end to that. So Pauline Hanson is her name, and she put, and I'll show it on the screen. She put a notice of motion. She put a motion through Parliament to reject the Great Reset, and she was voted down 2 to 37. 37 people in the Senate agreed that we need to do it. And only her and one other said no. And she said, Mr. President, I give notice on the next day of sitting, I shall move that the Senate, 1, notes that adopting the policies of the World Economic Forum's proposed Great Reset would have a devastating impact on the economic well-being and individual freedoms of Australians and calls on the government to boycott all World Economic Forum events in protest of their Great Reset agenda. She names it. She says it's a reset agenda. And it's going to the well-being and economic well-being and individual freedoms of Australians are going to be impacted by it. What? Yeah. Where was this? I just thought we were having COVID this year, right? For dinner, you know what I mean? Where did this dish come from? Well, if no one was noticing, Meckie and I are across the Great Reset. We've spoken about it. We knew about their forum, and the next forum where they're going to discuss their action plan. They formulated a roadmap, and now the plan starts in the next Davos group, this is the WEF, the UN, the IMF, and the prominent world zillionaires, like Bono and Prince Charles and stuff, right? They all sit around as a global commitment to reshape all our countries to net zero emissions to fight climate change. However, it's not just climate change, because I don't know about signing over all my property is going to affect climate change. How does that work? Maybe I could sign it over to you. So I'll just give it to you and you give me yours, and we'll still live in our respective properties, but we'll have signed it to someone else. Does that fix the climate?
So let's be very clear. If that were to happen, I would expect everybody to be part of it, including all the billionaires. And so you give all of your stuff up, all that you had. You're now living in the same house as me, next door. In fact, Mr. Bezos or Mr.
Oh my
Mr.
goodness.
Gates. We can go to barbecues together. You have nothing now. Okay, I'm sorry, that's not true. You have whatever I have, right? Which is what everybody else has. So signing over this, I mean, we have moved into this is. I still grapple to come to terms with this.
I didn't even think that part was true, but it is.
I know. It's like it's a nanny state on steroids, right? All your decisions, because if you don't own anything, you guess what? You're completely inconsequential. Who cares about you, right? Who cares about you? I don't care about you. And what is it? How does it all? I mean, there's actually no plan on how this would work. I mean, this is complete nonsense. And I have to say to you, unfortunately, and I've been living through this for the last 20 years in the corporate world, a lot of strategy is talked about and then implemented, and nobody, and I mean zero people, think about how to actually work in the new world, or what it means, or how to do things, what the processes look like. This, to me, sounds like another brain fart like that. Oh, it's a great reset. It's a great idea. Let's do it. What about the detail? Oh,
work that out later. Cross that bridge when we come to it, Meckie, I'll tell you. So Pauline Hanson says 9 dunker to the World Economic Forum founder and executive chairman Klaus Schwab. That's what she said. But she's going to be living on her own next to you and me, because she'll have to have signed everything away and she'll have nothing. Yeah, well, what happens if you don't sign it away? Well, it's just like the vaccine, Meckie. If you don't have the vaccine, you probably won't be able to do anything. Like I don't know, shop. Go out. If you shop online, there you go. But you'll be, this. I support creating little villages and living within our little villages. I support that. I think that's a really good idea. It's where we should be going. But and local produce and local seasonal fruit, seasonal food. But I really struggle, Meckie. I really struggle. With how any of this fixes anything. Unless it's just, That's it. No, it's not about fixing, but it's not about fixing. It's about the ultimate power grab. It's about, forget economic crisis, forget wars. This thing is. But can you just imagine how much resistance you would encounter in America alone if people start? Oh, you better sign off your stuff. It's my stuff. You come on my property, I shoot you. Okay, armed response if trespassing. That actually means something. Yeah, but see, I don't think we can be. I know there's the music, but I don't think we can be in a democracy if we don't have anything anymore. And we probably won't be at voting. It'll just be an oligarchy or autocracy. Yes. Anyway, don't buy the Great Reset. Don't buy it. I think I bought mine online. Stay tuned. We're going to drop this live stream. We're going to introduce a new one for our show topic coming up in a few minutes after the break.